Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel and I am super excited to be here today and I have some very exciting news to share with you. I am going to be sharing with you Waffle Flower's brand new pattern paper release. I'm going to show you all the pads and 5 different ways to use them. Okay, these are the sample packs. You get 12 sheets in each of these packs. They are a very affordable way to try out the pattern paper. The pattern paper is 80 pounds, it's smooth. This is pattern paper made by card makers for card makers. So you can see it is 8.5 by 5.5, and then these pattern papers are called half-half. So there's half-half dots and lines, and you can see that in half-half you get two 4.25 by 5.5 inch sheets next to each other so that you can cut them in half or you can use them all together. This is the sample pack of JJ Bolton JJ's Rainbows. These coordinate with JJ's dies, and I'm going to show you how to use those as well. And this is the Cassie Loiseau pack that coordinates with her special delivery stamps and dies. So you can see you have a couple of sheets that are the full 8.5 by 5.5, so you can make 5 by 7 cards out of them really easily, something you cannot do with a 6 by 6 paper pad. Okay, these are the half-half unicorns, dots and lines. I love that you get the dark color with a light color on top, and then you also get white with the color as a dot on top. Same with the stripes. You get color on color, and then you get a full sheet with white with lines, and then a full color. Okay, and the other thing I love is that they are collated. So all 3 of the same color are next to each other, so you don't have to go through the entire pack looking for the blue or the pink rainbow or whatever it is, right? It's all next to each other. These are the half-half dots and lines of the Botanical color. Now this Botanical color is kind of the mid-tone. So unicorn is the pastel and Botanical is that mid-tone, and then the brights are the Enchanted line. This is modern neutrals. These are a lot of fun in the neutral gray tones. I love this both of those marbles. And these are fun to do things on top. I'm going to show you how I ink blend on them. The other great thing about these pads is they fit in the organizers that you store your stamps and dies. So I use this organizer that is divided in the center. You can see that organizer fits my cloud storage pockets, my regular die pockets, and it fits my pattern paper pads. I don't have to get a larger organizer. So the 6 by 6 won't fit in this organizer, but these pattern paper pads, because they're 5.5 by 8.5, will. Okay, for the first card, we are going to take a look at JJ Bolton's JJ's Rainbows, and I'm going to cut this sheet in half. So it is going to be 2 4.25 by 5.5 inch pieces, and I've also die cut the Hearts panel die. So you can see that that Hearts panel die is meant to go right on top of these rainbow strips. So instead of cutting your cardstock strips, all you have to do is glue the back of the die cut and lay it on top of this pattern paper. It is so brilliant, so easy to make a rainbow, and I absolutely adore it. So this time I chose to go with the blue and blue hearts starting and ending, and I can save the other piece for another day. Now you can see that I lined up the hearts perfectly, but I didn't line up the top and the bottom. So that was my fault. I just wasn't paying attention because I was trying to get those hearts exactly lined up in the middle. I'll just trim that little bottom piece off, no big deal. Okay, I'm going to use that other piece that we set aside for a card, and I'm actually going to cut out a circle from the Nesting Circles die. Then I am using the rainbow stamp set and die to create a sentiment circle on top. Okay, for the next card, we're actually going to do that ink blending on top of the modern neutrals. So I've pulled out this sheet here, and you could cut it in half and have the two 5.5 by 4.25. What I'm going to do is cut this down to a 5 by 7 because that pattern stretches across the middle there, so you can use this for a 5 by 7 card as long as you trim the same off the top and the bottom and off the left and the right. And to do that, I'm just going to trim you know, 3/4 on one side, 3/4 on the other side, and that will keep that center of the sunburst in the center of the card. Now I am going to use Distress Oxide inks to ink blend on this. Because this cardstock is smooth, you should have no problems ink blending on it. It is a nice weight as well, so you can do a little bit of water spritzing, or you could do some glitter glitz gels or whatever you want to add some color to these modern neutrals. Or of course you could leave them neutral. The gray is absolutely beautiful. I love it, but I just wanted to show you how when you ink blend over it, because there's that hint of gray in the pattern in the background, it ends up looking like a sunburst that you stenciled, which I think, again, it just saves you all this time. It's so easy to do. I had so much fun ink blending on top of this, and because it's nice and smooth, you can get in there and really smooth out those lines. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to clean off the water media mat that I'm working on there. Very easy, just wipe in one motion. I was using a baby wipe. You can also use a microfiber towel. Okay, so the colors that I chose to use for my rainbow were picked raspberry, carved pumpkin, squeezed lemonade, mowed lawn, broken china, and shaded lilac. Of course, I will list all of those down at the bottom, but these are some of my favorite rainbow colors. I tend to, in all of the Distress Oxides, really gravitate towards those bright colors. So once I am done getting all the color down, I am just going to go back into certain spots, make sure that sometimes I touch the paper a little bit too much and I get some of the ink off onto my finger, and then it leaves a little open space in the ink. So I go back in there, fix those spots, fix any harsh lines, make sure that everything is all blended together, and then it looks like there's enough of each color. So you can overlap a little bit in order to get more of one color down if you need to, if you feel like one color kind of got short shrift there. Okay, the next thing I'm going to grab is my Distress sprayer, and I'm just going to lightly spray just some water onto this panel. Again, it is a nice 80-pound weight, so it takes that water really beautifully. And I just pressed a tissue on top to remove the water and to get that oxidized effect. I have the oversized Hello word die, and I'm using the half-half lines Enchanted, and I cut one out of the pink, the plain pink, and then one out of the white and pink lines. So the great thing is that those colors next to each other, the pink and then the pink lines, are exactly the same. So they coordinate really, really well. That's another beauty of using these pads. I am going to heat set this panel just to really make sure it is nice and dry, and I'm going to grab some sub-sentiments from the oversized Hello stamp set and put that in my MISTI. I had the Hello word die cut in the middle there just to make sure that I had the spacing right for those sub-sentiments. I'm going to use some anti-static powder tool and my Versamark ink and stamp those sub-sentiments at the top and the bottom, and the word die is going to go right in between. I did stamp them twice. There was a lot of ink on there, and so I just wanted to make sure I got a great impression. And now I'm going to use some white embossing powder on top. I love the way the white embossing powder looks on top of the rainbow colors in the Distress Oxide inks. I am going to just heat set that embossing powder to melt it, and now I have my two die cuts that I layered on top of each other so that it looks like a shadow. And I'm going to use a little bit of foam tape that I cut down into very thin, fine strips so that I can pop this up so that you can really see it on that rainbow background. Had a couple of little foam strips just hanging out the edge there. So I'm going to use some nonstick scissors to trim them down and then press this on top. And I love this pad. I think it's going to be so much fun to do all kinds of mixed media and fun things on there with ink and paints and all kinds of things. I'm going to use some waffle flower enamel dots in the Stardust and just add those around there. And then to make my 5x7 card base, I did take a 12x12 sheet of white cardstock that I use for scrapbooking, and I'm going to score it down at the 5 line because I cut it down to 10x7. Then I'm just going to add some tape runner to that and add my little card panel on top And that was it. Super, super easy and super fun. And here's another one that I made with the exact same technique, just slightly different colors, a little slightly different ink blending there. And then the oversized hello I cut in a dark blue instead of pink and just layered on top of each other. Okay, for the next technique, we're going to make a quilted background. So I have a couple of colors from the half dots Enchanted, and we are going to glue them onto a 4¼ by 5½ inch panel in a kind of circular way. We are going to try and avoid the edges of that pattern paper and just put the adhesive in the center there, and we're going to put the tip of the pattern paper towards the center of my card panel. Once that's done, I'm going to flip it over and then use some nonstick scissors and cut around the edges there. Anything that's hanging off is just going to get cut right off, and that's my first piece. Okay, the second piece I'm going to line up pretty much right on next to it. I decided once I get to the next one after this that I needed to kind of mess up the formula a little bit because I didn't want it to look too concentric. So I did want it to look a little more organic. So I am gonna, when you see the yellow, I'm gonna go over top of that orange a little bit. Now the reason that I'm trying to keep the adhesive towards the center is because I'm going to do some machine stitching on top. So once I start going over each piece of pattern paper, it does mess that theory up a little bit, but I have not had too much trouble doing this without gumming up my needle. If you do gum up your needle, you can remove it with some of that undo. So don't worry. I have broken a needle once though, fair warning, by getting it too gummy. Okay, so now that I have the whole card front covered, I am going to machine stitch down the centers of each of the places where the colors overlap. So I just did a zigzag stitch down between the red and the blue, the red and the orange, all of that. I hadn't used this pink color, so I die cut it with a stitched circle, and I am going to use some anti-static powder tool and Versamark ink, and then just stamp a happy birthday sentiment on there. And again, I'll link all the stamp sets that I used, all the dies that I used down in the YouTube description below. I'm going to heat set that so that I can melt that embossing powder, and I'm going to pop that up on some dimensional adhesive. Make sure you cut all those little extra strings. I had tons of strings hanging just from that little bit of stitching. And then I am going to use some Waffle Flower enamel dots. The Up and Running really coordinates well with these colors. I loved having these little enamel dots add some dimension and shine to the otherwise pretty simple card. I do love the stitching on there. I haven't stitched on a card in a long time, and I decided I need to start doing it again because I love the homespun look that it adds. Okay, for the next card, we are going to use this pattern paper to help us create a colorful shaker. So I have the Fresh Rainbow panel die. I've cut out a piece in white cardstock and then 2 pieces in white foam. And then I have this rainbow from the JJ's Rainbows pad. I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to use one and save one for another card. I am going to put some liquid adhesive on the back of the first layer of foam and make sure that I really get a little bit on every arc of the rainbow, every bit of the outside and that rectangle, because I don't want my little sequin bits to slide out of the card. Okay, so once I have lined that up on top of the rainbow, I'm going to add some liquid adhesive on top of this piece of foam. This way this is a lot easier to do this time because it's right on the paper, and it just makes it a little bit easier for some reason to not have to flip it over with the adhesive on the back. I'm going to layer that second foam on top of there, and that is going to create our shaker wells. We're going to let that dry, and the next thing we're going to do is put a little bit of liquid adhesive on the back of the white cardstock piece. I have a 4¼ by 5½ piece of acetate, and I just laid that on there and let that dry. Now I'm going to add my little sequin goodies inside all the open areas of the rainbow there. And the great thing about this is that you can use just a clear or an off-white or a white, and you can let the colors from the pattern paper shine with some clear sequin goodies. You don't even have to use multiple colors of sequins. Okay, I'm going to add some liquid adhesive behind the acetate on the spots where there is cardstock so that you won't be able to see the liquid glue. And I'll just lay this right on top, and that traps everything inside. All those shaker goodies are going to stay inside. I'm going to let this dry for a little while, and then I am going to use some of the little kid characters and the banner from the stamp set and matching dies Yippee. And I am going to put a little bit of a little bit of foam tape behind the kids and the banner, and then I'm going to have them holding up the banner right on the sentiment square that normally you could stamp your sentiment. So all of the fresh rainbow sentiments from the stamp set fit in that rectangle, but I liked doing something a little bit different with the kids and Yippee. Here's another one that I did, and this one was the pattern paper with the blue in the corners. So there's one with white and one with blue, and they both can be used to make really pretty shaker cards. And it's so easy, so much fun. Okay, the last technique that we're going to do with this pattern paper is heat embossing, kind of paper piecing. So I have these large flower stamps from the Wild Roses stamp set, and I have the half-half dots in unicorn. I'm going to take several pieces of that pattern paper. I'm going to make sure I use anti-static on all of them. I'm going to stamp them with Versamark ink, and I'm going to add white embossing powder to all of them. So I chose kind of a lime citron green for the leaves, and then I have the same technique for all of the flowers. I'm going to do one of each stamp in a different color so that the flowers are all different colors and the leaves are going to be all green. So I have a peach, a light apricot, and then a nice pink, but they've all got the lines in that white embossing powder. It kind of ties everything together. The great thing is this is a way to use floral stamp sets that don't involve any coloring. You don't have to color at all because they really just have the color of the pattern paper. The nice thing is if they're open stamps enough, some of the bigger flowers, you can see the little dots inside that heat embossed flower, which is, I love that. I think it's so pretty. Use the matching dies and cut everything out, and then I have two pieces of the pattern paper that I'm going to layer on top of each other so that the panel will be 4¼ by 5½, but I wanted a mat of two different colors. So it's the white with the little green dots and then the green with the little white dots, which I just think it's so nice to have both in one pad. Okay, I am going to stamp my sentiment at the top of that panel there. It says thankful for you. And now I am going to add some foam tape to all of my flowers and just start layering them on top of each other. Start with the biggest one, but then I realized that that long one needed to kind of sit behind it a little bit because it wasn't going to fit on the card otherwise, especially since I cut the panel down by matting it. So each of them is on a piece of foam tape, but what I do is I only put a small piece of foam tape in the center of the large flower. That gives me, first of all, it doesn't adhere super sticky right away. It takes a minute to kind of get stuck down. The other thing is it gives me room to tuck things behind each other and to play with where I want them. So I was like, oh, maybe I want the leaves over here, and then I realized I didn't. I wanted them kind of in the corners. So it just gives me that option. You can see I can pick up the whole thing there and really slide something underneath and then press it back down. And it will eventually really adhere. It just takes a little bit of time and pressure. Now I am going to use the Waffle Flower enamel dots in Stardust. I really love the white with a little bit of sparkle on it. I think it adds such a nice touch, and because it's kind of that white, it doesn't take away from any of the colors on the card. And that's it. So this is the other card that I made with the half-half lines in unicorn, so you can really use any kind of pattern that you like. I hope that you can hear in my voice how much I love these pattern papers, because I do. I absolutely adore them. I will be using them over and over again. I can almost 100% guarantee that if you're a card maker, you will love them too. So if you're interested in anything that I use today, including the pattern papers, all of those will be linked in the YouTube description below. Waffle Flower is generously giving away 3 bundles of pattern paper, and if you're interested in trying to win them, head to my blog. The link to that will be in the description below as well. I want to thank you so much for stopping by today. I hope you are all staying safe and healthy and making beautiful cards. See you again soon.